everybody? My name is C4. Welcome to more C4, home for all things Philadelphia Eagles. Last time we talked was really around like the draft free agency. Once that died down, obviously this channel's got put on the shelf just for a little bit. Because I didn't really know necessarily what to talk about. I didn't want to just make content for the sake of making content. And it was training camp and the preseason. It was a very, very boring preseason for the Philadelphia Eagles. We did not play any of our starters. I don't know if there was any depth chart moving based of what happened the preseason. Like this preseason was like we're playing mostly our third and fourth stringers to see who barely makes the roster. And I think the only thing we can kind of take away from the preseason game is like, well, Tanner McKee is probably better than Marcus Mariota. Probably, but then again, like in a pinch, you probably still got to go with Marcus Mariota. We saw Big Fred here, Fred Johnson on the offensive line, kind of stand out a little bit. On the defense, Christian Ellis, I guess, was a winner. We brought in Zach Cunningham via free agency. Had some UDFAs that we're going to talk about. You got Goodrich finally stepping up. ELI RICKS was the big name that I was very, very optimistic that would make the final 53. I mean, he was the steal of undrafted free agency this year, former five-star recruit, projected to be a first-round corner going into last year's college season. Obviously, things didn't go out the way that he wanted to, but he ended up in Philadelphia, balled out in the preseason, ends up making the roster, which is huge, man. He's kind of following the line, kind of, sort of, not really, like the Jalen Mills style of like late-round corner that should have went earlier, fell for whatever reason, ends up being a starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's going to have an opportunity to do so. We saw Sidney Brown ball out, the Canadian. Love seeing that. I mean, he was a guy that the one takeaway I have from his preseason was the scouting report on Sidney Brown. It really was, what he was in college. Not the best tackler, man. He was a guy that was a great athlete, showed great instincts, could track the ball well, had a lot of turnovers, but missed tackles. And I didn't think that was much of an issue. He was a tackle machine. He was probably the best tackler for the Philadelphia Eagles in this preseason. So the final 53 has been set. My predictions, I wasn't too far off, honestly. I mean, again, not going to pat myself on the back here. A lot of these were kind of self-explanatory. But we got the quarterbacks right. We got the running backs right. We got the wide receivers right outside of Britton Covey. It's just rare, man, for Philly to only go in with four. Clearly, they're going to be making some moves here at wide receiver. And I only had Covey there as a return man. Didn't, even value him that much as like a slot, because clearly it's going to be, Zacchaeus and Quez with Devontae in and out of the slot there. But, as it stands right now, no Covey. I got the tight ends right. We also landed a nice trade here. We got Albert O. Broncos traded Albert O in a 2025 7th-round pick to the Eagles for a 2025 6th-round pick. So we basically got him for nothing. And when it comes to Albert O, what you need to know is big-time athlete, man. This guy is not much of a blocker at tight end, but he is a very, very nice receiver. 6'5", 260, ran a 4.49. He is a very good athlete, and I think for the Philadelphia Eagles, as you can see here, Grant, I don't know that. Obviously, I don't know what that means for Grant Calcaterra, but I like the depth there. Philly has definitely been trying to figure out what they're going to do as far as depth tight end is, and like Howie Roseman has this infatuation with a great athlete. That's why the Tyree Jackson experiment has been here for so long in Philadelphia. They ended up cutting him, and I just feel like Albert O is like that next guy. And I like the move. I thought it was a nice move, an aggressive move here. I don't think it's the end. Like, I'm probably going to have another video up because I would be very surprised if Philly doesn't end up making a trade. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, like that stuff didn't really fall through for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, that was just Bijan Robinson all over again, right? Like, that was smokescreen. Was he ever going to come to Philly? Probably not, because we were never going to give him the contract that he was looking for. So, I mean, at the end of the day, is what it is. But we got the tight ends right that were, like, at least in the building. We ended up going with 4 tight ends. Offensive tackles we got right. We called old Big Fred there from Florida. You know Howie Roseman wants to try to, like, stockpile as many Florida Gators as he get, right? So we got Big Fred on the interior. Not everyone had Sua Opeta making it. I just think, when you look at the offensive lines, like, who does Stout like? And that's kind of how I made this. I made this as, like, the guys, like, Driscoll was a guy that kind of some people left off. Like, that is a guy Jeff Stoutland loves. And I think Opeta is one of, like, Stoutland's projects. Opeta was, like, a small school, big athlete. If you're a big athlete, Stout is going to like you. So Jeff Stoutland here with Opeta. I think Big Fred also kind of fits in that mold. He's like 6'8", 330, but, pretty good feet. So we got the offense right. Defense, I think we did pretty well as well. Defensive end, Riddick Sweat, BG, Nolan Smith. I didn't get Patrick Johnson. that is kind of the trade-off here. We got everything here right, and then you just got to swap out Nicholas Morrow with Patrick Johnson, and then we had the front seven correct. And I was actually surprised with this one. This is the one that, like, Covey is like, all right, they could maybe move on because you got Zacchaeus who could return punts and kickoff return duty. Penny did that in college. San Diego State, you could have that. But I thought Morrow, knowing, like, he was brought in because he was one of the guys of the new DC, right? Sean Desai, Morrow was with him there in Chicago. You kind of felt like he was going to be the guy that can at least, help everyone out because he knows the scheme more than anybody else that is on this team right now. So I was very surprised to see him go. Christian Ellis made it. He was a guy that's been standing out, looked pretty good in the preseason game. Last year, our special teams are bad. Our special teams still probably are a big question mark for the Philadelphia Eagles. But it felt like when we promoted him from practice squad up to the main roster, it was strictly as a special team. And the special teams got better. He was making tackles left, right, and center. So Christian Ellis was nice. Did we get all the corners right? Did they take 7 corners? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They did. All right. Well, yeah. Very happy. We got Goodrich there. He's going to be the slot depth. He's here instead of like Zach McPherson. Eli Ricks obviously was a baller. Josh Jobe getting rave reviews. I mean, Slay was gushing all over him that he was going to be pretty good. And then the safety room is where a little bit of a discrepancy. They only have 4 safeties, which is kind of surprising. So we did not take Kevon Wallace. I wonder if they would try to bring him back. I think Kevon Wallace is... I don't dislike him as much as the fan base kind of dislikes Kevon Wallace. I think he offers special teams ability. I think he showed during this preseason pretty good tackler. It sounded like he had a great training camp. So maybe a surprise cut. I would like to see him back on the practice squad. I still think there's some value there. But we keep Justin Evans, who is a little bit of a sleeper. I got the special teams right. Put punter in because I was hoping to God we got rid of Aaron Siposs, which we did. And I think right now, like, everyone's going to be like, well, we're doing at punter. We're going to look at Matt Ariza. Potentially, I think there's going to be, like, obviously, like a workout, a tryout. I think a lot of eyes are on what's going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers have 2 really solid punters on their roster right now. Presley Harvin, that thick king, and Braden Mann, who was a really, really solid punter in college, and he was with the Jets last. And I saw a report that Philly tried to claim Braden Mann, but obviously they were good, so we're really late on the waiver wire. Ended up going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think that's where I would watch if you're trying to think like, well, what's the punter good situation? I would always be more inclined that we're going to take the odd man out there in Pittsburgh, be it they eventually move on from one, or we land a trade for like a conditional pick versus like a Matt Ariza. But I'd love to see Matt Ariza at least get an opportunity. I'd like to see him at least kick the tires, see if he is legit, just to hush the fan base here a little bit. But as it relates to the 53 man, very optimistic, very happy with this roster. I don't think there was anybody that got released that I was like, no. I think the opportunity for that rage to be induced was Eli Ricks. That was the big one. But I think, new Howie Roseman 2.0 is like in line with me. Like old Howie Roseman with like the 3 bubble guys that I would love to see on Philadelphia. He'd be the guy that would like just he'd release them for whatever reason. That would have been like Eli Ricks would have been gone. Christian Ellis would have been gone. Like Marlon Tuipulotu would have been gone. Like the bubble guys that I really do think are solid players. I could have seen like Rashad Penny get released because he's kind of odd man out in that backfield. But I think this is a really, really strong roster. And looking at it now, it's incomplete though. Like this is our 53 as it stands. I think you're going to see some moving pieces here. I'm going to assume, we'll just say Moro Jomo here on the defensive line. There we go. We got the mouse up there. I think he's probably going to go practice squad injury reserve. He got that concussion. I think it'll probably be best to, there you go. Get rid of him. You got to bring in a punter. I think you could see, Patrick Johnson's very much like the bubbliest guy, if that makes sense. I think you're looking at Patrick Johnson and probably Kentavious Street as like the 2 guys that, let's be honest, Philly's going to have to bring in another wide receiver at some point. They're probably waiting to see who might fall on the scrap heap a little bit. But I think one of those guys will probably make room for a wide receiver. I'd be very surprised if Philly doesn't carry 5. I could also see, with the addition of Alberto, like a Calcaterra goes to practice squad. I don't think he's really going to be at any... I mean, him and or Stoll, but I feel like Stoll can at least block. So you can take Calcaterra, put him on the practice squad, stash him there. Because him and Alberto are kind of going to fill that role of like the second receiving tight end. I don't know if you need both of them active. So I think you could drop a tight end for a wide receiver. I think you could drop either one of these DL or edges. You're going to need another linebacker in there. Unless they're going to have Nolan Smith kind of hybrid it a little bit, which they could, which they maybe should try to maximize it, try to get on the field. They're probably going to have to drop one of these for a linebacker. In terms of like what linebacker, man, I don't necessarily, you look at around, that's like the one position that I'm kind of like, hey, wide receiver, bunch of bubble guys get released. You could see 15 guys that I'd be like, yeah, that'd be interesting, kick the tires on him. Linebacker, however, that is a thin position group right now in terms of available free agents. Philly was going all in, kick the tire mode when we brought in Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack. Miles Jack retired. So I do think Philly will be exploring a linebacker and a wide receiver off of this roster, but I don't think there's anything too bad. I think myself, probably most of you guys watching this, if you were like heavily invested in the Eagles 53, it all kind of came down to like Eli Ricks, man, because that is a guy that absolutely earned his spot. That's what you want to see. I think you, as a fan of a franchise, as a fan of roster construction, I want to see the guys that actually play and stand out during the preseason make the team. How many, like literally, it happens every year this time of the year, where it's like all these teams are seeing like their starlets from the preseason, they just get dumped and released. And you're like, what's going on? What's happening? Right? And for Philadelphia, we could have been one of those teams. We could have seen Tanner McKee go to the practice squad or something like that and be at risk getting poached, and he was outstanding in the preseason. We could have seen an Eli Ricks, like Howie Roseman gamble, that he would be able to come back around, land on the practice squad, they could hide him from the other 31 teams in the NFL. But the fact that we're making these moves has a great sense of optimism. But I do not think this is the end of the roster turnover. I think Howie Roseman could be cooking up a trade. I don't know. I don't have a true read, I guess, to follow it up, to kind of close this video. I don't have a true read like, the big trades. Jonathan Taylor, the running back room, I think that ship has sailed. I think that ship never really entered Howie Roseman's mind. He probably asked what they wanted, and that was about it. I think when you look at the safety room, Budda Baker's a big-time name. I would love to see something like that come to fruition. But again, I don't know, man. I think the Philadelphia Eagles might be bullish on Reed, Terrell Edmonds, and Sidney Brown being able to do a job, get on the field this season. So we will have to wait and see. So out of all the 53-man roster, was there anybody that got cut that you really want to see? Like Devin Allen was a big one, especially after he had that big return in the final preseason game. That stings. I think he will be a guy, though, that Philadelphia will definitely try to target and bring back to the practice squad. Trey Sermon was another release. He'd be a cool guy to bring back. I think he had a couple splash plays, even though he had a really bad fumble in the preseason. I think he'd be a nice guy to kind of stash away. But the rest, I don't really know, unless I'm absolutely blanking on somebody. So let me know, who else would you want Philadelphia to go get at this point? Like, if you had to understand that Philly has to get a linebacker and a wide receiver, what available wide receiver and or linebacker would you like Philadelphia to get? Feel free to let me know in the comments section below. And again, guys, expect a lot more content coming here to More C4, because the season's back. The season's back, and I got big plans for the channel here as it relates to the Eagles. So thank you guys very much for watching. As always, first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed, because that helps out the channel with the YouTube robots. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.